This episode of Queen Sugar was the one of the most heaviest episodes that I've seen thus far with this season alone. I thought it couldn't get any more heavier, but it just keeps getting better and better. And I would say this episode, if I had to give it a theme, it would be a hard pill to swallow. And I believe the one that has the hardest pill to swallow would have to be Charlie in this episode. So before I get to Charlie, I want to start off with the fact that we know from the previous episode the mill was on fire. So the mill looks like it's just hella destroyed. It does look like there's still a structure there, but as far as the equipment on the inside, it definitely looks like they're going to need to replace everything and, you know, rebuild a lot of the mill. But it does look like there's still some sort of structure still standing. So, but you can tell the work is going to be expensive, and it's not like it's just going to happen overnight. Plus, there's an investigation that has to be done, considering that it has been ruled that this is an arson. So there's so much skepticism throughout the episode that the Landrys and the Bordelon has something to do with it. Charlie and Ralph Angel even make an attempt to kind of get one of the Landrys to admit to the grandmother to admit to, you know, destroying or having an involvement with destroying the mill. And, you know, she definitely shows her racist true color. For example, she makes a reference to Charlie being mulatto. I find it interesting. She makes a reference about her love for when sugar is processed and it comes out as white as snow, as it should be. Though those are her words, not mine. But we all know prior to sugar being processed is actually brown. So, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, but while the heifer is talking, you know, I know this is a show and it's scripted, but while the heifer is talking, you know, processed food is actually not good for us. So the sugar is actually more good for us when it's brown than it is, you know, when it's white. So for her to say something like that, she, you know, we could always rebuttal with that, like, heifer brown sugar is healthier for us, you know, than when it's processed, because we all know we're not supposed to be eating processed food. But anyway, let me get off my soapbox. You know, that's a great rebuttal to her mess, but it did show her true colors. But what they couldn't manage to do was get her to basically criminate herself on recording and admitting blatantly that she has something to do with the fire at the Queen Sugar mill, Charlie's mill. So, you know, it pretty much sends Charlie on like this panic throughout the whole entire episode of just overworking her brain and trying to figure out what she can do, because that mill, it affects all of the farmers, that especially the black farmers that she had to work so hard to convince to even use her mill. Okay, she had to work hard to convince them. A lot of them are set in their ways. A lot of them didn't want to go up against the Landrys. So it took a lot of convincing them. And now you have these farmers these black farmers who are basically like, listen, this is messing up with our revenue. We put our trust in you, and now this has happened because you wanted to go up against the Landrys. We should have just, like that, this is how they sound, like we should have just worked with the Landrys. We should have never did this. And they basically just, you know, showing Charlie that if she doesn't get this together, it's deuces. Like there's no loyalty, basically. And now you can't really blame them on one end. You know, they have a family to feed. This is their bread, and this is how they butter their bread. But at the same time, like, damn, where's the loyalty in the bigger picture? You know, do you constantly want to sit up here as a people? Do we constantly want to be under the thumb of white supremacy? Or do we want to work hard and grind like our ancestors have done to get further along, to push to push things further along for our people? Someone has to do it. Ultimately, it doesn't just happen by begging someone to give us a chance. We have to demand our place in this life and demand the things that we want, declare it, demand it, and go after it. Anyway, I could be on my soapbox all day about this. So then Violet calls on a favor from the grandmother Landry's brother. I'm very curious to know, how did she end up even owing him a favor? But you know what's interesting about him? Throughout this episode, he's basically showing that he had nothing to do with the situation, that he Two, kind of seems skeptical about whether or not his sister has something to do with it. It doesn't seem like he believes that's beneath her, that she could possibly have something to do with this. But he's making it clear he don't play these type of games. Now, he's something else, he's admitting, but he don't play these type of games. But when Violet called on the favor, I'm just like, a favor? Wait a minute, when did he owe you a favor? Okay, this is interesting. And he took it very seriously. You know, he seems to be a man of his word, clearly. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, to see, because her favor is basically him finding out who did this. You know, not a maybe, you know, she wants to know who did this. And it's going to be interesting to see in the upcoming episode, you know, what information he's going to come back with, because apparently you could tell he feels some sort of indebtedness, if that's a word, to Violet. So, you know, it seems like he takes this very seriously, and he's going to go out there and get this information. But speaking of Violet, and I'm going to be all over the place with this, but speaking of Violet, you know, Hollywood has came back. Hollywood comes in, embraces Violet, and Violet embraces him back. I really enjoy seeing that scene, because I'm like, okay, Violet is working through it. She's working through, you know, the traumatization or the PTSD from Jimmy Dale returning to town and not wanting anyone to touch her. She's working through that, because now she's allowed, you know, Hollywood to embrace her without putting up resistance. And I really enjoy seeing that. And I always tell you all, you gotta give it up for Hollywood. Like, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man, you know. But anyway, you know, Violet ends up having a dinner at her home for the family, just to kind of relax, kind of convene together. And sometimes you need that, like, if not all the time, we need that. But the sad thing is, you have Nova, who is missing from the table. You know, she wasn't invited, just like she wasn't invited really to the Queen Mill sugar mill site. Queen Sugar Mill site, basically. But I believe it might have been Micah who called her, because, you know, she's family. But Ralph, Angel, and Charlie was not having it. Charlie snapped on Nova, and, you know, rightfully so. Nova just has to give them space. I don't know why she doesn't get that. You know, that's kind of like that's kind of the selfish side, rather, of Nova. She just doesn't understand. She has created some serious damage. You know, she took her family's information, personal lives, and put it on blast for the world to read, basically for the world's own entertainment. As much as she want to convince herself it's for educational purposes, which it may be interpreted in certain spaces as that, it's still basically for entertainment, which is going to make the book sell. But she did it all without permission. All it would have taken was her to simply get permission, and then she did it because she knew she was not going to get the kind of permission she was looking for with the kind of information she was going to release. But nonetheless, she ends up throughout this episode confiding in her friend. I gotta remember his name, the cop. I don't remember his name at the moment. Calvin, that's it. She ends up confiding in Calvin. There's even a moment where Micah shows up at her house while Calvin is there, and he's like, listen, you're cool with this man? He's a cop, and what about what the cop did to me? And even if he's not a cop that does it himself, does he stand around and watch other cops abuse black and brown people? And Nova eventually at the dinner table asks Calvin this, and Calvin admits, while he has not done it himself, he has witnessed other cops doing it, and that he was a coward for doing so. I would say this: kudos to him for pointing out, yes, you were a coward, but at the same time, no, you don't get a gold medal for admitting that you sat up there and sat by and watched fellow officers who, you know, beat on black and brown people. And you don't get a gold medal for that, but it does bring I think it can possibly, I must leave that open to possibly make other officers feel a sense of conviction, because if no one is pointing it out, as far as officers go, if no one is pointing it out and breaking the so-called blue code, then it's like it's just going to continue, because no one within the structure is stopping it. So it is, you know, I guess you could bring awareness, but at the same time, like, how much awareness do we really need? It's happening over and over and over again. And I want to pause for a minute on the subject. I would like to say, for those who do speak out and normally are against that, they more than likely probably won't stay within the precinct or the district or the police department they work for. If that kind of corruption is taking place, they're more than likely not going to stay with them, because there's going to be a majority who that is their status quo. That hasn't just been happening overnight, you know, for many reasons that I'm not going to go into because it would make this video too long. But for the most part, these police departments know what they're doing. So when you get someone that comes in, especially like a rookie, and they're witnessing these things, they're going to be egged on and encouraged just to go along with the flow. And if they decide that they're looking like they want to go against what the status quo is of that department, you best believe they're going to come up under some serious, how can I put it, backlash, some serious threats. There are so many stories out here like this. For example, Officer Nakia Jones of Warrensville Heights, Ohio, she was one of the very few officers in the entire country of the United States who spoke out against all of these unjust police shootings. And I believe it started back when I can't remember which one of those police shootings happened, so I don't want to misquote, but it was some years ago, and she spoke out against it. And do you know just about the entire Warrensville Police Department turned against her? And eventually they found a way to get her out of the they found a way to get her out of the police department, but not before they basically made her life a living hell. They attempted to make her life a living hell with threats, passive aggressiveness, outcasting her. And now she's went on to share her story and went on to become a author and wrote about her story. But still, the fact that she was someone that was an officer that tried to stand on the right side of things, the right side of so-called justice, but yet the people that she was working with, her colleagues that she was taught she was supposed to stand by and stand with in life and death situations, turned against her for standing up for what was right. So, you know, with that being said, it takes bravery. It really takes bravery. It takes someone with morality. And it really, there should be something in place for those individuals, to be honest. There should be some legal representation, some free legal representation, some type of organization to protect these individuals who want to be officers, who really want to do their job, to protect the community and truly serve the community, not serve the system, not serve white supremacy, but truly want to serve the community, because there will come a time when they're going to stand against that majority, and you best believe the majority of them are put out here on the streets to terrorize black and brown people. So when they decide to stand against that, who's going to protect and defend them? Because you best believe they're no longer going to be seen as officers when they stand up against these other officers. Anyway, to jump off of that, because again, I don't want to make the video too long, moving forward, you have Ralph Angel, who is still going through the legalities of this situation with his reentry program. And I find this scene very interesting, and that's probably why this video is going to be long, because there's a lot of racial undertones to this episode as usual, but this one specifically, it brought a lot of things for me to the forefront in my mind. For example, the importance of starting to see more of our faces in certain spaces, as well as black ownership. So with this reentry program, you have Ralph Angel, who this is his black owned business, basically, you know, as a black man will be considered a black owned business. He has to go up against a review board of all Caucasian people, none of which can relate to his situation, all of which he has to hope is going to treat him with equality. And like, you don't know who you're up against. These are not to say that just because they have a black face that they could care any more about you, but I'm just saying it's quite interesting to see that when we have to go through certain things to get certain things, for example, loans, business loans and jobs and things like that, is consistently, and y'all can argue with me if you want to, but it's consistently white faces that we have to sit in front of and wait for them to put the stamp of approval on what we want to do in life. So here you have this black man with this reentry program that he is bringing on predominantly black individuals to work on his farm, but yet he has to go up against all of these people for permission to do so. I don't know about you all, but that's not really freedom. That's not really us being free in this country, when we have to sit up here and find ourselves in situations where we're even trying to do good, but we have to basically ask for permission to do good. So in my opinion, there is no benefit to even operating in this system. It's time to figure out a way to get outside of this system and do our own thing. Anyway, so that really brought down Ralph Angel. He issued out the checks to the workers, but their main concern was, since the mill has burned, are we going to still be able to work? They have families to feed. They're trying to do things right. They're not trying to be a part of recidivism, go out and do some crime to make some money and find themselves right back in jail. Unfortunately, Ralph Angel has no answers for them. But what he did say, which is what I liked, is that he was going to try to ask the other farmers. Crazy how things work. Because that Queen Sugar Mill burned and is destroyed, that's messing up the other black farmers who were using that mill to harvest their sugar and process their sugar. So now, without them making the money that they need off of that sugar that was being processed by the mill, which is now burned, they can't afford to hire workers. They're barely going to be able to afford to keep their own farm up. So isn't it crazy, the domino effect of how this stuff is, how vulnerable that we are as a people? I don't care if you are a black person who, you know, interracially date. At the end of the day, or interracially married, that there's no, I don't hold that against anybody on my channel, but at the end of the day, there is no escaping your blackness in this country. You have to always remind yourself that there are certain things that people that look like you are up against. And even if you have your biracial children, which again, I'm not speaking against that or anything, you have to be mindful of the fact that they're going to be treated as a black person. So when you want to put your head in the snow and forget about these problems, they're going to find a way to keep to you know, basically remind you of who you are in the eyes of society. And that's why no matter what situation you got going on in your house, whatever it is financially, you have to remember or we rather as a people have to remember what we are up against and what we need to be doing collectively to make things better for ourselves, for our people, for our children, for future generations. It's just a responsibility there. And best believe we would not be where we are right now had our ancestors had not did the same for us. And even though some days it may look like we still got a long way to go, which is very true, we got to understand it could be a hell of a lot worse had our ancestors not set us up for where we are right now. Anyway, moving forward, you know, Ralph Angel does find solace in his girlfriend, the attorney, who's doing an excellent job of representing the family, representing Ralph Angel's case, giving legal assistance to them. She's doing an excellent job. So they do, you know, really connect a lot on this episode. And we also see that Darla is very jealous of the situation. She even ends up calling, like, and I didn't like that at all, that Darla called late at night on Ralph Angel's phone like that. She doesn't know the female friend is there, but it's just like, girl, y'all not together no more. You can't keep calling him every time you feeling some type of way. He's not your man. Where is your man, by the way? Darla even has a man. Where is her man? But for some reason, I just got a feeling eventually they're going to end up finding their way back together, because that just seems like how the story is going. And I really don't like that, because I really like the attorney, and I feel like, you know, she's sitting up here giving her all to Ralph Angel at the moment. And really doesn't look like, you know, she about to get much out the deal, because like I said, eventually for some reason something tells me he's gonna find his way back to Darla. So anyway, moving on, we have, last but not least, Charlie. Oh gosh, this was a tough episode for Charlie. Charlie was going through it. I mean, can you blame her? Charlie was doing a lot of good throughout these seasons. You know, she did a lot of good, but unfortunately Charlie built it. A lot of what she was doing was built on a foundation of some devious things that she was doing to make these things come into fruition. She meant well, but unfortunately she was too much playing the game instead of just, you know, doing things more of an honest way. So a lot of things that is happening now is, you know, biting her in the butt, but she meant well, and she did what she, you know, she thought she had to do. And, you know, it's just, it's a rough episode for Charlie. It's really sad. You know, I don't even know how to put it. She's going through every episode. I mean, every scene we see in this episode, we clearly see she is going through. What I want to highlight is really getting to the end where Romero comes in her home. And I'm thinking Romero is at the door. He's about to console her, because again, this just been a rough episode for you, girl. But unfortunately, Romero comes in with something in his hand, and he goes, "Is this true?" And Charlie sees it, and she already knew. And once he said that, I already knew what it was. So, but you gotta wonder, okay, First the mill burns down. Now this is put in the paper about the hurricane that she forced those migrant workers to continue working through on the farm. So who could have put that information in the paper, and who could have known? Or was that another detail that was actually in Nova's book that the local newspaper or the local press got a hold of and produced in the newspaper? Now that could be an option as well. So, you know, either way it go, it don't even matter, because now Romero knows it's the secret we all were just talking about in one of those previous episodes, that this is what Charlie did not want Romero to discover. And you know, she didn't even have an answer for him. I think at this point she was just exhausted. She'd just been going through, and she was just tired of hiding, tired of not being transparent, just tired of lying. And he was like, really, you don't have any answers? These men lost their lives. And she didn't have any answer for him. I think at this point she was just drained, and she was like, you know what, I did it. Yep, you're right, I did it. Just go ahead and yell at me, do what you got to do. And Romero was just like, yeah, deuces, and he just left. He had no, you know, he wanted her to justify it, and you know, because he's supposed to be her man at this point. He wants answers. He wants that reason to still be with her, but she can't justify that. You can't justify that. And you know, I'm sure he knew. And at that point, Charlie was too drained to fake it or lie or try to, you know, make him feel better, try to plead for forgiveness. She was at that point like, forget it. At this point, I'm done. So that was very deep. Side note, while I'm on my soapbox, you have Micah and his girlfriend. And at the end, towards the end rather, Micah's girlfriend is basically telling Micah that they need to make plans for prom. And that, you know, they're basically considering you know, what they're going to do prom night, which I don't know about you all, but when I was in school, prom night meant that certain, you know, how can I say, extracurricular activities, adult activities, you know, physical activities between a man and a woman were going to take place. And the issue I have with this is, I guess no child should be watching this anyway. Really, no teenager should probably be watching this. But I do have an issue with that. Not with the show mentioning it, but just with the whole concept. Because like I said, when I was in high school, this is what would go around. Like, this kind of information was what was going around, that on prom night, this is like a rite of passage. This is what's supposed to happen. And I have an issue with that because of the fact that I just don't understand, where did that even derive from? You know, who created that? What is the origin of that? And when, you know, is there anywhere in this country or wherever, you know, there's seniors having proms, is there anywhere that's being dispelled, that myth? You know, is there anywhere that myth is being challenged? Because I don't feel like that's okay. I don't feel like that's right, and I don't feel like we should be teaching our children that on prom night, that is their rite of passage to have sex. That is their rite of passage into woman and manhood. It's almost like it's being viewed as that, and that's not the case. There's so much, for us adults, we understand what, you know, sex is. I done said the word now. We understand what it is. We also understand how powerful it is and how important, and many of us can probably agree, one should wait until marriage, you know, for many reasons. So I don't really like the fact that that is a theme of prom night, and I just really want to know, where did that originated from? But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with Micah and his girlfriend. So I don't really want to see that. I don't even want to hear that from Micah and his girlfriend. Listen, I'm a mother. I don't want to hear that. I don't even want to see that. Now, I'm going to make sure, at least it's teaching me, I'm going to make sure I talk to my children about stuff like that too. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Like I said, this episode was definitely a hard pill to swallow. If I didn't mention this before, you know, it seems like Nova is okay still with Calvin. At least he was honest in her eyes. But, you know, again, I spoke about this in a previous episode. There is that contradiction there between the two. I mean, and that's such as in life, you know, with many interracial relationships. Unfortunately, you know, society puts beliefs in us, puts stereotypes in us, places racism upon us. So, you know, it's a lot that happens. Two people could be genuinely attracted to one another, genuinely in love with one another, and society just like, no, you're not supposed to be together, you know, and these are the reasons why. And you're like, wait a minute, we have nothing to do with that. But that's Only in America. So anyway, that's it. I'll see you all for next week episode. Peace.